Okay, welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream, September 9th. We're back with VSBLTY Groupe, VSBY, VSBGF over the counter. And for anybody that's new to our program, our goal is to bring you those stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside potential. So far, we've had 8 of them this year in the last 18 months. Stocks that are between 1,300%, 5,000% so far is the record. We're going to find out if we're going to have our first 100 bagger. Maybe it'll be Visby. To see, we're eager to have our first 100x stock. So maybe VSBLTY Groupe can be that stock. So the format for today is going to be very simple. The company is going to, we're going to have Jay do a video presentation. Then we're going to open up for Q&A, and then decide for yourself if you think Visby is going to be that 10x to 100, the next 10x to 100x stock. So with that, Jay, let me turn it over to you, and sure. We'll go through the demo, and I'll pop back in for the Q&A.
Great. So thank you, Jack.
Take it away.
Can you see my screen? Okay. I was talking to one of our investors yesterday, and he was saying what we need to start doing as an organization is telling our war stories. That's the phrase he used, our war stories. And so this presentation today is really just me talking over a bunch of video that we've collaged into a mashup. And I'm going to share with you some of the things we're doing and provide a little bit of a voiceover so that people that are tuning in today can see exactly what we're doing. I'm going to start the video here. What I'm going to just point out quickly on this video, if you don't mind, is some of the vignettes of the various applications. And I'm going to let this roll, and then don't worry, because we're going to come back to it later to show you precisely what we're doing. On the top here, you're seeing some examples of retail activations that we've done in sort of live space. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the cooler. I'm sorry, I'm going to back that up just a minute so everyone can see that, and I'm going to stop the video. On the left-hand side, you're going to see the cooler deployment, which we've been talking a great deal about. This is our Imbera relationship, and on the top panel of this particular slide, you're going to see various activation types. We're not a hardware company, but because we found ourselves in a situation where we're building specific applications for retail, we have partnered with hardware companies like a Lenovo to build these applications for us. And I'll just advance a little bit further to go into a little bit more detail. Just as a bit of a primer, or for those of you that know, a refresher of what VSBLTY actually does in terms of how we go to market, we have 3 discrete software modules. We have Data Captor, which is the privacy compliant anonymous analytics component. And we'll share a little bit about what that looks like in just a moment. Vision Capture, which is the content management piece. It is the piece of the software that governs the visual display. And of course, VSBLTY Vector, which started with only facial recognition and has now expanded into facial recognition, demographic capability, license plate detection, weapons detection. So that entire category of products is really best described as our security suite. I'm going to fast forward to this really quickly to a narrative that we talk about called the store is media. And this is actually critical to understand if you're to fully appreciate the opportunity that the company has in front of it. We're now looking at a place where the physical bricks and mortar is beginning to be valued as a really valuable media channel. If you understand anything about our ABI deal, which I can talk about in just a moment with some examples, you'll understand that principally what we're doing in that deal is we're deploying a media network in retail media network. And it is sold to consumer packaged goods companies who want to influence people at the point of decision, or what they call in retail, the moment of truth. Here's an example of the types of deployments we would have. And this is a typical grocery store. An example is a really high value. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to rewind. Stop the display, stop the video here really quickly. That's an end cap. An end cap is the end of an aisle. It's actually considered to be the most valuable advertising landscape or promotional landscape in the store. We're digitizing this platform. You can see there's a display up top, and there's display what we call shelf strips at what you might consider to be eye level. There's also a camera. I'm going to use my mouse right here. Hopefully everyone can see it right there. That camera is doing live analytics in retail at an end cap. And what you're seeing, what you will see more and more of, without doubt, this happens to be a Coca-Cola deployment. AHA is their product. We're seeing more and more activation at end cap that is basically a brand takeover. The brand will basically deploy the technology on the end cap. There's other participants in this ecosystem, but the brand is not actually paying for the equipment, for the deployment. They're actually paying for the space as a media. And that's the pivot point that this marketplace is going into. Another example, two more examples are kiosk and cooler. We're going to come back to them. Some of the key visibility capabilities, I'm just going to rewind real quickly. This is unique visibility proprietary know-how and patented. The three concentric zones represent media values. If someone passes this kiosk that is right on the left-hand side and doesn't look at it, they are valued in a certain way by media buyers. If, however, they pass and look, they're valued in a different way, a higher value way. If they pass, look, and approach, like this individual is right here, they're valued higher. Of course, a non-attentive shopper is worth less than a attentive shopper, clearly. And of course, the shopping location is extremely valuable because we are influenceable at that point of sale. We can be influenced. We're subject to suggestion, and we know, based upon the science, that things that you buy in retail are heavily influenced by the things that you experience in retail. They call it in retail parlance the moment of truth, the place where decisions are made. To complete the conversation around these concentric circles, the green is interaction. So if I can get a campaign, and it's about the power of the content as much as anything, if I can get a campaign to encourage you as a shopper to touch the screen, engage with the screen, somehow engage with the brand, you become a more valuable impression. Now I've pivoted to advertising language, but a passing by that doesn't pay attention, a passing by person that doesn't pay attention is worth less than someone that actually engages and interacts, obviously. So those are the three engagement zones that visibility talks about. Some applications, this is one we're working on with Sensormatic, which is a loss prevention pedestal, which has fitted on it an LCD screen for consumer engagement at the point of entrance to retail. So at the same time that this thing is doing alerting on looking for RFID tags or apparel tags that have been attached to product that have been removed from the store, and so it conducts a loss prevention exercise, but it also, and at the same time, conducts advertising, and because of the camera right up here, analytics as well. This is a breakthrough technology. There's several 100,000 of these deployed in the marketplace at the moment, and Sensormatic, our partner, is the dominant player by far. This is the Embera engagement. We're now calling this Cooler as Media. I'd like to talk a moment just for a second about Cooler. Cooler is a really attractive platform inside of stores as a media platform. Obviously, we all know who the major beverage players are, both on the alcoholic front, on the non-alcoholic front. But the reason why Cooler is so valuable and why it's going to be a significant contributor to Visibility's bottom line in the current year is that it is a destination. I'm dropping by the convenience store to buy a 6-pack of Budweiser. That's destination shopping. And it's also very large in terms of its actual size. It's 50 to 55 inches. So there's very important and very creative executions you can do on the Cooler door that has enormous impact on consumers. So it's number one, its landscape, its size, and the second, the fact that it functions as a destination. And the idea that we can actually divide up the physical display, the display itself, into portions or zones that could highlight product within the cooler. And of course, as we often point out, it is not only the ability to display on the cooler, but also for the cooler to be completely transparent. Some examples of the work that we've done. It's also, as I should point out really quickly, a touch screen. Oftentimes what we talk about when we're speaking about stores media is not only the ability to drive promotion and advertising messaging and narrative to consumers live and in retail, but to measure that experience. This is the computer vision. If you go back to the module slide, this is what we call data capture, privacy compliant computer vision. So not only is AB InBev or PepsiCo deploying a cooler to do display for promotion and advertisement, but they're measuring the performance of that display. You measure that demographically, you measure that by dwell time, and I'll show you some examples of that as we advance this conversation. GDPR protected is our validation that we are privacy compliant and we're not in the spooky and creepy area of gathering up analytics in retail. Quickly, I'm going to let this run really quickly to show you exactly how we capture the sum of faces that have been detected by the camera. So this is exactly how we correlate data for the purposes of brand validation in retail. You see on the right-hand corner, lower corner with the laptop there, which is actually showing the content that was playing, and then we correlate that or align that with the number of impressions we're delivering and the nature of those impressions. It's the sum of visitors, but it's also the breakdown. This is, I'm going to stop this and rewind it for just a second because I want to make sure we get the whole thing. But the setup is important. What I'm about to show you in terms of the video that you just saw briefly, a brief piece of, is an actual deployment we've done in Modelorama. We're in several hundred stores now, and we might actually be over 1,000 at the moment. I'm not sure as of this exact moment. But what we're deploying is actually what's captured in this video. This is an actual Modelorama, and you'll see precisely how we're using the technology, all components of the technology. It's obviously identifying a female as she's in retail, and we've got a cooler door that plays promotion and advertising. You saw how it was once transparent and then became, as she approached, it became, I'm going to stop for a moment, became transparent as she approached. I'm going to run that again just so everyone can see it. Transparent and then digital. This is the principal application in Modelorama right now. It's a 40-inch screen with a camera right here. So that camera is providing the analytics. The screen is providing, of course, the advertising, but the camera is meant to not only generate advertising metrics and measurement of all types, but also the security platform that we run. So we're running both data capture, vision capture. Here's an example of the type of information it's gathering up in real time. So we've just shown you how, and I'm going to run that again so people get it. We've just shown you how when she's looking at that screen, she's motivated to engage in a purchase at the point of sale, right? The whole idea is we're influencing at the point of sale. This is the metric that we know works and we can measure, of course. Here's the measurement. Visitors by hour, by day, week, many gradients of measurement. We can, and in this particular slide, what we're showing is the performance of each creative. So we've done a creative type in retail, and we're actually comparing the performance of one creative to another creative in real time. So this allows, these are all fake brands for the purposes of this presentation, but let's say it was PepsiCo versus Anheuser-Busch. We can tell you which campaign was more successful, and we can break that down by time of day, by gender, and by age, which is fascinating because it gives the retailers an opportunity to really optimize their messaging in retail. I'm going to pivot over to the security side of our business really quickly here by showing you a video that we produced in conjunction with a large city police department on the East Coast where we're deploying our technology. I'm going to move forward. Well, I've got a reference here to Mexico, but I think most people who have seen my presentation before have seen me refer to the impact we've had in Mexico City. The idea here is that we're providing, actually, I'll take a quick moment to speak about this. The idea is that we're providing on people's mobile phones the means with which to secure their own neighborhood. This is not providing video cameras in public spaces and in city avenues to feed directly to law enforcement. It is not that. It is providing cameras within neighborhoods so that the neighborhoods themselves can maintain control of their privacy, of their security. They assert control of their own security. This achieves a bunch of objectives, some of them subtle. We're no longer talking about selling solutions to law enforcement, you know, Big Brother, because at this moment in time, in the way our culture is behaving, that's a negative connotation. Instead, we're bottom up. We're bringing security capability to citizens, and we're allowing citizens to share that video capability amongst themselves, and if they wish, to share video with law enforcement. You see on the right-hand side, Adrian Reliq, who's the mayor of Benito Juarez, which is a subsection of Mexico City, you know, doing in a press conference how effective this technology has been in reducing crime. So, of course, we're very delighted about that, and we're showing some enormous progress. We produced, on the right-hand side, you'll see a production of a video that we've done, and as we launch our new website in the next coming days, you'll be able to find that video on that website. Here's a quick thing, and I'm gonna let this run for a minute because this is actually really kind of important. These are multiple cameras deployed at multiple locations. I'm gonna go from left to right. I'm actually gonna rewind that again, and I'm gonna stop it. On the left-hand side, you're seeing car classification and car density tracking in real time. A camera on a pole looking at the Embarcadero, a major thoroughfare in Mexico City, and counting the cars and then classifying the cars. In a moment, I'll let it run so you can see that happening. And on the right-hand side of the same, on this view here, is actually the same thing, but in classifying those vehicles by type: bicycle, motorcycle, a pedestrian, a car, a truck, a bus, that sort of thing. On the lower left-hand side, you see the same thing occurring, but now you're picking up license plates. And on the lower right-hand corner, you're seeing one of our guys, just so everyone knows, being identified by a facial recognition camera that happens to be outside the perimeter of a location. So I'm going to rewind that again, and I'm going to run it so everyone can see that happening and see the analytics happening in real time. All right, this is what I was referring to before. This is a video we produced with a police department on the East Coast. This happens to be our offices in Philadelphia. We're actually running our weapons detection capability. You can see on the lower left-hand corner how geospatially, I'm going to stop it for a moment, how geospatially the shooter is identified, not only where they have been, which is the pale, the light green points on this map, but the red where the shooter is right now. You can imagine the benefit of a situational response when in real time law enforcement or the building or whatever authority is given this information. Not only have we identified a weapon, but we're able to classify that weapon, long gun, handgun, etc., and locate the shooter geospatially on a map. This is a very exciting development for us. We're in production on this product right now. It is coupled with and combined with facial recognition or other algorithms that we're able to do. I'm going to start this again just so everyone can see it. You can watch the map as it lines up with alerting. When you see that bounding box around the gun, it's actually alerting. It's sending an alert to a higher level dashboard. Play that one more time so people can fully appreciate it. So, of course, the objective, and I think people will remember the fact that we signed some time ago a deal with 911 Inform. 911 Inform is perfect for that application because we are combining alerting mechanisms with geospatial location across overlaying on a building map, but on top of that, we're conducting some kind of workflow. And by that, I mean, if a weapon is detected and validated, the building goes into lockdown. So this could be on the perimeter of the building where we would identify a weapon. And before the shooter has any chance to do any damage, a workflow engages where building goes into immediate lockdown. You might all remember that terrible tragedy in the FedEx facility in the Midwest, where the shooter approached the building from 20 meters away. He was identified as having a weapon, but because there was no mechanism or workflow to address that, people died. And we've now got an opportunity to do something really meaningful using our weapons detection as an entree to that category. A very meaningful area of development at the moment. So Jack, that is essentially the end of my presentation. I wanted to show some demos and stuff going live, and I'm happy to turn it over to you to guide the question and answer, if you will.
Okay, perfect. Jay, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, fantastic. So this was, okay. So I just wanted to, actually, I thought maybe we could go back at some point, do a share, but okay. So there's a couple of really amazing things here to unpack. Let's kind of start, and then we'll kind of talk about today's news, the partnerships. We'll go to Q&A. But I think the main idea, which I think finally, it's been a while since you did a, so people can actually see what you're doing and how this actually works in the store. This concept of stores media, which is really like, I mean, this is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. This is really like, what, again, it's like we talk, it's what Google did, the Google ads, what Facebook did, for the internet, you're basically doing in the physical space, in stores, in, retail locations. And I think, look, the store is not dead. The store, I think, is going to come back bigger than ever because people are really, I mean, there were social animals. People are tired of being at home shopping online. They want to go into physical stores, and especially when you get all the stuff, this video, it becomes much more engaging. It becomes entertaining. People want to be entertained. This is the next level of basically retailing. This is where it's going. People want that experiential thing. So the data that you're able to get, it's incredible stuff.
Well, here's some data to support what you just said. These are hard facts. In retail, the four major categories that we look at and address are drug, grocery, C-store, and DIY. 90%, actually it's around 88%. 88% of fulfillment in each of those channels is done in person. So it's not being impacted by e-commerce. Of course, that's enormous. 12% is enormous in terms of where else is it being fulfilled. But 88% is still in bricks and mortar. And the challenge, as you just said, is making bricks and mortar more engaging, more of an experience. Now, what do brands want? What have brands always wanted? Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo. They want to engage in an intimate relationship with their customer. And the more intimate that relationship, the more is in it for brands. Brands view the store's digitization as an opportunity to go past the retailer directly to their customer. And that's important. I had a chief digital officer of a $52 billion brand say to me this week, I'm going to paraphrase it. The store is today where Google was in 1994 for the internet. We're just now at the beginning of measurement in store. We today as a brand, and I'm speaking as if I were him at the moment, we today as a brand learn several thousand things about e-commerce visitation, many data points, several thousand. And when a shopper comes into our bricks and mortar store, we have 5 data points. So we have to figure out a way to diminish that delta so that the experience can be measured. We now have lift and momentum in store. It is forever changing.
Jay, I think your run froze up a little bit. You were saying, can you just repeat that?
Sure. I'm not sure where I froze up, but
the last part.
The chief digital officer saying to me, we have several thousand data points when someone visits our e-commerce site, and we have 5 data points when someone comes into our store, and we need to reconcile those two polar opposites. And the last point I was going to make is we are now at a point where the store will be forever changed because brands want to engage in an intimate experience with their customers, and they want to disintermediate eliminate the retailer in that process.
No, and this does, but in a very, obviously in a friendly way. There's transactions happening. So the main takeaway though is that although what we saw on the screen, I mean, it looked amazing. The reality is that this is not a concept stock. I mean, you're actually in a revenue phase. I mean, this company is really scaling right now. So, and it's really on track to getting to that valuation. I mean, I think all you need to do really to get there is going to be to hit a run rate of, let's say, even I think 30 million run rate could get you to a billion valuation.
Yeah.
It's such a big, what you're addressing, such a massive market opportunity that is untapped, and it's. I mean, anybody who sees it, they get it right away, which is one of the reasons I think that you have all these major partnerships with, whether it was Sensormatic. I mean, you have all these companies that are on board. I mean, it's a massive validation. So I think the question is, at what point do you think you can hit that 30 million run rate? Because I think that'll get you to that billion valuation, which I think would be what, like $5 on the stock? What is that, roughly?
Yeah, something like that. We're 185 issued and out, so 5 would take us north of $500 million, maybe put us at 700 million roughly. Well, let me answer the question. And there's really two ways. I've given out guidance for 2021 of 4 to 7 million in billings and 15 to 20 million in bookings. And so let's assume we get the enormous favor from the marketplace that the forward multiple is what is projected on. So if we get forward, 10 times or 20 times or 25 times our forward multiple, we'll be at $400 or $500 million market cap in less than a year, and potentially considerably less than a year. So, and I just don't. I mean, especially lately, I'm not in the mood of trying to project where the market's gonna do and how the market's gonna perform. But our job is just to keep our nose to the grindstone and patiently wait for this thing to get appreciated for what it is. Because you're right. If you look at the company and you look at the one deal, ABI, the aggregate value of that deal is north of $1 billion. So we just have to execute. And I'm not trivializing execution. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but that's where we are right now. We're in delivery. We're not in building. We're not in concept. We're not in R&D. Sure, we're continuing to push the envelope on R&D and innovate, but we're in delivery. We're in production at the moment. And to your point, I want to double down on what you just said. We have at least a half a dozen. I think I counted them last night, and I think I've got 7 of billion-dollar market cap companies that are our partners. And just take a breath there, because we're a small company, and we've been able to convince these multiple very large channel partners that we are an important and strategic participant for them. I'm very proud of that, and I appreciate that we need now to deliver on the basis of those contracts and relationships. But you got to start with where we are now, you got to start with those relationships. And I'm really delighted to WestRock, an S&P component company, Sensormatic, a very large multi-cap, Intel, Ability out of Taiwan, Anheuser-Busch. I mean, it's significant, in my opinion.
Yeah. No. By the way, the internet won out just when you were saying what the value of the Modelo contract is. Just repeat that part. The dollar value of once it's fully deployed.
The aggregate dollar value to the joint venture, just to be completely clear and honest about it, is north of $1 billion over the 5-year run. To Visibility, it is 300 million, 350 million. So, I mean, it's the largest media network, largest retail media network on the planet at the moment. So if you just look at that deal and try to figure out what the market cap impact to Visibility of that deal is, you're going to get north of $1 billion just based upon that and that alone. And I'm not suggesting we're resting on our laurels, because we're not. We're doing other things, but that's a big deal.
Right. And this is just one store in Latin America. And there's again thousands. You got 7-Eleven. There's CVS. We can go through a trillion. I mean, there's thousands of. I think I did some research. I mean, there's hundreds of chains that have north of 7,000 locations.
Yeah, globally.
In the Western world, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so so obviously, okay, so a couple of things, and then we'll go to the Q&A. We got some great questions I want to get into. So we got number one is the stores media concept, massive concept. You're getting traction already. You got deals, you got revenue coming in, and I think in the next like 6 months or so, we're going to hit that inflection point where people will say, "Wow." I mean, I think probably maybe in the next quarter they're going to wake up and say, "Wow, this is really happening. The train has left the station. The rocket has left the launch pad." I mean, this thing is I think it's very important for people to understand that because we haven't probably touched on enough is what you have is really extremely scalable, because I mean you've basically built this to scale. I mean you can right now, because through these partnerships you're not you're not depending on having to manufacture this stuff yourself, deploy. You're very asset light. It's very agile, as that's the new thing people like to use in core. Very agile company, right? Because everything is through partnerships. So you can, in theory, you can scale to, I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but how fast can you scale if you needed to?
Well, we've removed scale as a barrier for this little company, right? We've been able to construct partnerships that provide enough value to our partners that would allow us to remain in our lane. And our lane is innovative, world-crushing, world-beating software. That's our lane. And of course, we're more intimately involved in the actual selling process because the glossary of stores media, the glossary of security, the expertise required is significant. So we don't really rely upon our partners to sort of sell that in. We sell that in with our people, with our talent, with our staff. But as it relates to delivery, we're not bricks and we're not feet on the street. We can't be. We're too small to be. But Intel, to their enormous credit, identified this, I don't know, going back a couple of years now, and they used their Rolodex to assess the willing participants and brought to us key players. HCL, market cap of $43 billion. Tech Mahindra, market cap of $19 billion. These are major players that everybody in tech knows about. And they have feet on the street. They have installers. They have day two. They have network operations centers. They have all the things that we now don't have to build. So to us, aggressive growth means sell, 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 sell. Don't worry about deployment. Don't worry about delivery, because those are in the hands of experts that do that. And that's an important thing to take off my worry list.
Okay, Jay, let's jump into some audience questions. Okay, first question is actually talking about today's news announcement, which can you give some details? What does it mean? Like, what's the significance of this for Visby?
I think it starts with a short narrative. Intel, like very large companies, are looking for other ways of building services revenue. And one of the companies we've been doing business with, you'll note in the press release that 2 of them are named and the 3rd is not yet named. So I'm not at liberty to talk about them, but if anyone's following our company, they'll know pretty quickly who it is. They have their own cadence and their own way of disclosing the information. But both Tech Mahindra and HCL have disclosed their participation in this venture. It's not a joint venture. It's a brand new company with brand new executive management, with brand new funding. It's a Series A round for $6 million. We have a 10% ownership in that. And the 4 of the 5 major projects that the company starts with have visibility product and licensing at the core. So not only do we get revenue from that as a license, it'll be our biggest customer in the next 12 months by far, but we also have a 10% ownership entry participation in equity. The other participants are all, well, one of them is a major Fortune 50 company in the semiconductor space, and the other 2 are in the delivery space, large systems integrators in the delivery space, HCL and Tech Mahindra. No slouch, either one of them. I just gave you the market cap specs just a moment ago. So we're now in a place where globally we're going after these marketplaces. The 2 in particular are retail analytics as a service, more deals like ABI or AB InBev, and security as a service, more deals like Mexico City. So we're basically taking both of those as enormous proofs of concept and creating a reference grid around them. And then HCL, Tech Mahindra, and the third party is selling this to their sales force globally. That Austin GIS entity that was created by those of us that are part of the equity participants will have revenue impact to Visibility in 2021, in the remaining 4 months of 2021. That's how quickly it's getting off the ground.
Okay, so this is the infrastructure as a service. This is
Yes.
this is what this deal is. Okay, you're saying this is going to generate revenues in the next 4 months, like now, basically.
Yes, like now. Yeah.
Okay, so again, your part. I mean, these are you got what is it? HCL, Tech Mahindra, huge companies. Exactly. So what exactly what are they selling? What is this that they're going? What's going to be the deployment?
I'll take one vertical really quickly. So it's a smart city vertical. An example would be we go to a large government that is looking to do things to use computer vision technology to secure their borders, as an example. And so they may want to do this at 350 land entries, border entries, which they might have around the perimeter of their country. That becomes an engagement of Austin GIS. The delivery partner will be HCL, and the component player would be Visibility. So computer vision to identify vehicle detection, person detection, maybe even weapon and license plate detection. And we would be the component supplier on the software. HCL would round up the servers and deploy the cameras and monitor all of that, and that's how we would do business together. And the reason why is we want to be able to go to those kind of customers and say, don't worry about the nuisance of putting your bill of materials together. Don't worry about the nuisance of procurement. We will do it all, and we'll wrap it in a services umbrella, give you a 5-year contract, and now the entire thing is, instead of 40 million CapEx, it's $1 million a month for 5 years. That's the kind of approach that we're taking, and we're focused on large $200 million plus deals.
Okay, so these basically sounds like deals with major government type contracts, essentially. Essentially, so you're basically supplying the AI, the machine learning, all that stuff.
Right.
That's
right. I love it because it allows us to stick to precisely what we're disciplined to be, and doesn't get us in a place where we're doing things outside of our core skills and the capability. So this is exactly what we wanted. This is exactly what we planned for, and this perfectly on strategy. And now we have supplementing us delivery partners that can actually allow us to move faster and scale more rapidly.
Okay, so you gave an example, like this would be used at like a border crossing or something else. So basically, I'm going to use an example. Okay, you got these cameras displays at an airport, right? People are coming off a flight, so before they get to the customs guys, they're looking at, they're walking through the hallway, looking at ads, and the camera's kind of looking at them to see, is this guy acting suspicious?
A better or equally
something for customs. People fit a pattern, right? They
right. An equally good example is precisely what we're doing for Anheuser-Busch,
right?
Which is 55,000 stores, a screen, a camera for each store. The camera's doing analytics for retail, right? The stuff that we just went through. Also analytics for security, and it's doing display. So instead of Anheuser-Busch or whatever entity putting all those pieces together, working on the bill of materials, going all through the procurement madness, instead that's being enveloped in a services umbrella and sold per store per month, which is precisely what infrastructure as a service is.
Okay. We're running a little late. I want to try to get to about 3-4 questions. Excuse me, try to get a couple questions here. Jeremy's saying, did Jay just say the couple will make more money there? Did you say that you're going to make more money in the next 12 months with this new deal, this infrastructure as a service, than the Modelo? Is this even bigger than the Modelo deal?
I should probably parse my words as carefully as I'm thinking them. Potentially more deal. If we're tracking against our project cadence, which is really aggressive, then this deal will either equal or potentially eclipse the ABI deal.
Okay, so that essentially is, that kind of implies that this thing is already there. It's already off the ground. They have contracts that they're signing essentially right now.
Remarkably off the ground, in contract signing right now with projected revenue for 2021.
Okay. So it sounds like it sounds like there's going to be some, all All right, we'll have to see. We'll have to.
Yeah, right.
Basically, this is going to be basically saying, stay tuned for the next few months. There's got to be something huge here that you're not disclosing, but there's something. Sounds like there's something huge in the. There's like an iceberg, big, massive event. Okay, I think we got a couple questions about Lenovo. I mean, we've got so many questions. I'm not sure if we're going to get to everything here. I think people were asking about the end cap. Here we go. Okay. If they are you doing something with auto checkout to compete with Amazon Go stores?
We are peripherally. We're not an autonomous checkout solution. That's a whole field of endeavor that we've looked at and decided to pass on. But if you think about the use case of checkout, Jack goes and buys a case of beer and some vegetables and he gets ready to check out. Now at that point of sale, where he is checking out and paying for his goods, we will do demographically triggered messaging to Jack for impulse buys. So you're at the point of checkout. We know who you are demographically. We might even know a little bit about your buying history if you've opted in as a customer. And based upon that, we will drive promotional messaging for you at the point of sale.
Okay. So essentially, it's very good. So you're basically staying in kind of the lane, the AI, the data. So to answer, I guess this is somebody else wanted to ask that question. So in the video, you were showing a cashierless checkout where so essentially you're only doing the advertising part.
Our lane is demographically triggered advertising and measurement. So we measure the performance and the behavior and the sentiment of people at checkout, because that's a useful outcome. But we also drive advertising impressions at the point of checkout. That's our role in cashierless or autonomous stores. That's the role.
Okay. Let's see if we can get a couple more questions here. Somebody was asking about NASDAQ. A couple of people were asking about NASDAQ. Okay, sorry, I think my computer froze. Okay.
$4 initial listing requirement, 30 days sustained, $4 USD. So, I mean, it's a fantasy conversation at the moment. But it's not. My philosophy is we're not going to do a 20 to 1 or 25 to 1 reverse just to achieve a $4 ILR, because that does not achieve the objectives of the shareholders. It just doesn't do the job.
I appreciate that. Yeah, because this is like, I don't like reverse splits. Sometimes rarely they work. Rarely they work.
They'll work if you're already on a forward momentum, right? They'll work, but it's just so difficult to thread the needle. Prefer to do it the organic way, frankly.
Yeah. No, it's much better. Okay, so maybe this might be our last question. Okay, can you explain how the different partnerships won't compete with each other?
We spend a lot of time trying to convince, or working on convincing, with pretty good success so far, the executives of those various companies to ensure that they can play nice in the sandbox. There's room for everybody. And so far, that's been pretty successful. In fact, we haven't announced this yet, but we'll be announcing a retail consortium, which is actually going to have two competitors in the same consortium together, working collaboratively, which is sort of weird. And the second thing is this Austin GIS has two aggressive competitors, both as board members and equity participants, that are combining quite nicely. There's so much to do here in terms of the global addressable market that no one's really worried about the nickels and dimes at the moment. Okay. I'm not sure that that'll continue forever, but it's good for now.
So you meant like HCL and Mahindra, because they're both.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay. Both Indian companies, both come from the same lineage, right? And both aggressive competitors with one another.
We have a great question. Okay, so the software, the technology, is it at the camera?
So great question, and a technical question. And it sounds to me like that might be asked by a technical person. So I'm going to give a technical response. We run at the near edge, at the far edge, and on the cloud, wherever you wish to run. So a local compute cluster in the neighborhood, if you will, or on the camera itself. This is the work we did with VSBLTY, a world's first, as far as I know, where we're actually running inference logic or computer algorithms directly on VPU, visual processing unit, on the camera itself. So the camera does not need companion compute to do inference logic, which is kind of cool. And you'll see more from that soon.
By the way, I think it's very interesting. I don't want to like go on a tangent because I love this marketing stuff that you have. But you showed something by the end cap display, and you said, I wrote this down. three zones. What is it? The three zones right by the end cap, and they're basically like about 2 feet apart each zone. So so depending on where that person is, it has a different add value measurement, all that good stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's incredible stuff.
You got it.
Okay. By the way, so the other thing is, which is very interesting. So the 3 big markets you're going after for the retail deployment is the convenience stores, okay, which people know, like a 7-Eleven type store, whatever.
Four markets, Jack. C-store,
yeah,
which is the place where this is getting adopted first. It has the most momentum.
Okay.
Grocery is seeing deployment. Look at Walmart, Kroger, Safeway. You're seeing fairly large scale deployments, and we're participating in some of those. And then DIY.
Okay.
And
drugstores. Okay. By the way, it's interesting. I just read an article in the Wall Street Journal that there's a massive shoplifting problem in San Francisco. They have a deal where if you can walk into a store and walk out with if you take out less than $900 worth of merchandise, they will not prosecute you. So you have people walking into drugstores now, right, and with bags like garbage bags, filling up with and they basically have guys who are like looking for specific things that they can resell on Amazon, whether it's a razor blade, different prescription OTC medicines. So, and they're walking. I mean, and it's like a multi-billion-dollar problem. Walgreens is closing down stores. So imagine if they deploy your thing, and they actually have special detectives now that are basically tracking these guys. They don't even care about the actual shoplifter. What they want to do is they want to get to the guy who's the main guy. So with your tech, they basically, if they deploy this at your technology at Walgreens stores, they could solve a lot of problems.
Because we not only do loss prevention, facial recognition detection. I mean, if someone steals from a Walgreens, it's probably not their first time. So they're already in the Walgreens loss prevention database. And right now that database consists of a loss prevention officer with a clipboard, right? So all we're doing is digitizing that. All we're doing is allowing computers to perform the same function. And when we deploy our computers along with our cameras, we're not, we're not just looking at the entrance, but we're looking within the aisles as well. So in the same breath, our systems are doing analytics for demographic and marketing purposes. They're also doing facial recognition for LP matches, for loss prevention matches. Two things at once: a little bit of offense and a little bit of defense. And that's a great way to sell this solution. We're getting more and more traction with that narrative at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting. And like these Walgreens CVS stores, which are like in urban areas, I mean, their main thing is they need to maximize every square foot of space. So they need to know, like, where can they put up the merchandise so they can get who's passing through? How can they sell more? Basically, they need to sell within that, per person that walks in the store. This solves all that stuff. Okay, so Jay, thank you for the demo. I mean, that was the main. I mean, last week you answered a bunch of questions. Today, really, I just want people to see this demo because we haven't shown that in a while. It's amazing stuff. Oh, last question: was there another Fortune 500 company that you're partnering with?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
This is when I have to resist the urge to be the cowboy guy. I cannot breach the privacy. We have agreed to not disclose, and we're not going to disclose. The timing of disclosure, which will happen, is theirs, and I'm told it's in the November timeframe, but it could be sooner. It'll be clear to everybody who it is if you just watch what we've done and what we're doing.
I think what I should add, just for the audience, is that look, there's a lot of companies in the microcap world. They announce, we have a partnership with whatever, or this Microsoft or this company. I mean that means they bought a product or something. You actually have partnerships which.
We actually have a company. We actually have a company that we own with that company.
Right.
And I'm on the board. They're on the board. The leadership team for this new company comes from that Fortune 50 company. So this is incredibly integrated. And
I think, and we've seen examples. I think people have posted and you haven't really promoted. You should promote this more. But there's actually I think Intel has a page which talks about how your solution is deployed. Is it Intel or something? I think Intel or who's got. There's a bunch of them I've seen, like WestRock. It's like they're actually like real partners. They're actually selling your stuff.
There's not a day in my calendar. there's not a day in my calendar that doesn't have Intel meetings, not a single day. So we're extremely integrated with Intel and about to become more integrated, not just on this Austin GIS front, which was mentioned earlier, but new initiatives that are parallel and equally compelling. So more to come there.
Okay. All right, Jay, you got voters here. Jay,
okay, great. I'm Canadian. I'm ineligible as a Canadian. Yeah.
Well, they keep changing the laws here all the time, so you know you got hope. Jay, listen, thank you again, and we'll catch up with you
right.
in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fantastic news at Visibility. Let's get ready for Reliq. Let me just pull up the banners. Okay, and Lisa.
Hello, Dr. Jack.
All right. You're the doctor. I'm just Jack. So I just want to adjust. Maybe okay. Adjust. If you could, I want to get us the same height. You can hear me, okay, right?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we're at the same height. Okay, fantastic. And we're gonna do today. We're gonna do like the slideshow for new people, and we'll get some audience questions. So I just want to see. We got the slide. You got the screen ready. You got the share. Ready to go. Okay, here we go. Okay, I got the slide, and I just want to have it ready. So to go to, okay, perfect. And let's go through a few to make sure it's working. So let's go back to the first one. Okay, and so don't touch anything. I'm just gonna do a quick intro. I'm just gonna do a quick intro for the video later, and then and I'll come back for the Q&A.
Yeah.
I'll disappear. Okay.
Okay.
So, okay, everything is correct on the screen. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream for September 9th, 2021. We are back with Relic Health Tech, RHT and TSX.V, and RQHTF. And again, for anybody that's new, our goal is to bring you those stocks which have that 10x to 100x upside. We've already had 8 of them. Stocks are between 13x and 5,000x. We just had the latest one that became a 20 bagger is Peak Fintech. Recently became our second 20 bagger. And now it is time to find out if Reliq is going to be that first potentially 100 bagger. We haven't had that yet. So again, all these companies, they have 3 things in common. One, they're going after massive multi-billion-dollar market opportunities. They're at a key inflection point right now, and there is multiple catalysts in place which can ignite that massive increase in valuation. And again, we're starting to see that Reliq has hit all 3 categories. They've already passed the inflection point. They're moving forward, and we're going to get today actually we're going to do the slideshow today. We're going to get the story in writing on the screen. We get a lot of audience questions. So again, watch the presentation and decide for yourself if Reliq is going to be that 10 bagger stock. So with that said, Lisa, I'm going to disappear.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Jack. As Jack said, my name is Lisa Crossley, and I'm the CEO at Relic Health Technologies. Quick overview of the forward-looking statements disclaimer. It's in writing here. You can review that at your leisure. So Relic Health Technologies, who are we? What are we doing? We're a rapidly growing, profitable global telemedicine company. We develop innovative virtual care SaaS solutions for the multi-billion-dollar healthcare market, and we're primarily focused on the US healthcare market, which is the largest single market in healthcare in the world. Our YouGo platform benefits everyone in the system, patients, clinicians, payers. So it's a win-win-win for all of those constituents, as well as obviously for us as a company. We provide comprehensive turnkey solutions to clinicians that allow them to rapidly and easily deploy new virtual care programs that generate high profit new revenue streams for them. We receive recurring revenue from subscriptions. We are growing very rapidly and organically. So we grow not by acquisition, but through pure organic growth. We have strong margins. By the end of this year, we'll be over 75% gross margins and over 45% EBITDA margins, which is very unusual in healthcare. And we expect to at least double revenues year over year for the next 3 years and beyond. Recent milestones that we've achieved as a company, at the end of June, we hit our revenue run rate that equates to profitability, so $1.5 million a quarter in revenue. That was our run rate at the end of June. The current quarter will be our first full profitable quarter. We've expanded this year across the continental United States as the US has kind of come out from under the pandemic, and moved into Puerto Rico and the US Virgin Islands, which we're very excited about hopefully visiting at some point. We've signed contracts with over 50 US clients. We have over 200,000 patients in what we call our pipeline or our backlog, and that we've got agreed upon implementation plans with the clients. So we'll have that 200,000 patients onboarded by mid-2023. Our average revenue per patient is $40 US per patient per month, so about $600 Canadian per year. So by mid-2023 at full deployment, we should be doing at least 120 million annually in revenues at those high profit margins. And the company does not need to raise capital to fund operations, even with the aggressive milestones we've set for ourselves going forward, those being hitting a revenue run rate of $2 million a month by the end of this year, so by the end of December 2021, and uplisting to the NASDAQ in 2022. I think we're well on track for both of those milestones. I won't read every line of this otherwise somewhat boring chart to you, but one thing I do want to focus on in this is the multiples. So we're currently valued at about an 8x revenues, looking at forecasted revenue run rate for the end of this year. And you can see at the bottom the little notes that typical multiples in this space are anywhere from 5 to 30 times forecasted revenues. But the high growth, profitable companies, particularly those with high EBITDA margins, tend to fetch much higher multiples that are well over 25x. And an interesting example of multiples in this space, if you look at the Livongo acquisition by Teladoc, they were acquired for over 40 times revenues at a point when Livongo was operating at a loss, so negative EBITDA. So there's certainly, if you have the right company with the right profile in terms of growth, profitability, and margins, and multiples in this space are really very compelling. And I think we, as a company, will certainly fit that target, those target metrics of high growth, high profitability, and great margins. I won't dwell on this slide either. I think most of you know me at this point, and this is the fourth company that I've run as CEO, and I've been CEO of Reliq since 2016. And we have a very strong, very experienced team with not only a lot of depth in healthcare and technology, but also really experienced in bringing new technologies and new ventures to market. And so who are we and why do we do what we do? Well, the problem that we're addressing is the fact that, in the developed nations, roughly 80% of all healthcare spending is down to the 20% of the population who have chronic diseases like chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, congestive heart failure, high blood pressure, kidney disease, diabetes. And in the US alone last year, they spent 18% of their GDP on the chronic disease patient population. So really the only way to reduce healthcare spending is to focus on those patients who have chronic diseases. And the reason they're so expensive to the healthcare system is that these are typically elderly patients who have anywhere from 2 to 8 different chronic diseases. They're responsible for managing these complex clinical conditions in their own homes on their own, and they don't typically do a terribly good job. Less than 50% of them take their medications as prescribed, and that alone accounts for a significant percentage of hospitalizations. And hospitalizations are very expensive. These patients are typically admitted to the ICU when they go in, and you're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars for that one admission. And the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, who are the largest single payer in healthcare in the world, recently over the last few years have moved away from the typical fee-for-service model. So the more often a doctor sees a patient, the more money they make, to more of an outcomes-based compensation model. So, it's really changed the way that healthcare is provided. And that's created some very strong tailwinds for our company, where physicians not only can make more money by using our software and providing proactive care, but they can avoid significant financial penalties from Medicare and Medicaid. So our software, we're a cloud-based software as a service provider, and we have a modular software platform. We also offer care management services. Basically allows us to function as an extension of the physician's office on kind of an administrative basis, which helps physicians onboard more patients faster and generate revenues for themselves faster. And with our platform, clinicians can easily, seamlessly begin to offer a very broad range of new virtual care services, including remote patient monitoring, behavioral health integration for mental health care, and addiction care coordination, basic telemedicine, transitional care management for post-discharge from skilled nursing. So it's a very, very flexible, powerful, comprehensive platform. And with our care management services, we're really offering kind of a cradle to grave solution for physicians. We do everything from pre-authorizations, electronic pre-authorizations, to Medicare and Medicaid when we get the patient lists from physicians, and through the delivery of care, and then all the way up to electronic claim submissions to Medicare and Medicaid on behalf of our clients. A quick use case to kind of give you an example of how our system functions when it's used by patients out in the community. So if you have a patient who's at home, living on their own, they have chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and they start to have decreasing lung function. So with typically any chronic condition, and you'll see that patients' health will start out at a certain level, let's say we'll call that a 10, and it'll gradually decline to sort of a 4 or 5, at which point they need to be hospitalized with one complication or another. And they rarely ever get back up to that 10. So you have this patient, they're at home, their lung function's starting to degrade. They either don't remember to check their lung function with the spirometer they're supposed to blow into every day, or they don't remember to write down what it was yesterday, so they don't notice that it's declining, or they don't remember what they're supposed to do when they start to see that decline. And so essentially the patient allows the condition to deteriorate for a period of days, finally notices that their lips are turning blue, they're having trouble breathing, they can't do normal activities, and they go to the hospital, where they're admitted to the ICU with pneumonia, often caused by that shallow breathing that COPD patients get as their lungs become more inflamed. And they're often experiencing hypoxia as a result of that, so low oxygen levels through the body, and can end up in multiple organ failure. And a lot of that hypoxic damage is permanent. So leaving these patients on their own in the home tends to not only result in these frequent hospitalizations, but also in long-term poorer health outcomes and poor quality of life. If that same patient is using iUGO Care, after a few days of the spirometer readings showing a trend towards lower lung function, the care team will receive an automated alert saying this patient needs some attention. The physician can call in a new prescription, maybe an oral steroid or a change in their inhalers, either the bronchodilators or the inhaled steroids, or they can send over a respiratory therapist, but they can keep that patient healthy and at home. They can avoid any further inflammation, avoid the development of pneumonia. They can even proactively prescribe antibiotics, and they can prevent any organ damage from hypoxia. So these small interventions in the home have a dramatic impact on not just health outcomes, but ultimately on healthcare spending by avoiding those multi-hundreds of thousands of dollars admissions to the intensive care unit. So the benefits of iUGO Care for patients, it's obvious, better health outcomes means better quality of life, better patient satisfaction, and it reduces hospitalizations, which are not just costly for both the patient and the healthcare system, depending on their insurance, but are also really disruptive to not only the patient, but their entire family. For providers, doctors, home health agencies, other clinicians, we're creating new revenue streams. And so there's compelling reimbursements from Medicare and Medicaid for deploying proactive, preventative virtual care programs. And they avoid financial penalties. So Medicare and Medicaid can claw back several percent of the reimbursements you've received in a given year if your patients are hospitalized more often than the average Medicare or Medicaid chronic disease patient. And so driving those better health outcomes not only creates new revenues, it avoids the loss of some of those revenues to penalties. And when we started in 2018, there was one billing code for remote patient monitoring, and clinicians could make $59 per patient per month. And they can now make $372 or more per patient per month, US dollars, by deploying a YouGoCare. And they're only paying $40 to $100 per patient per month for the subscription to a YouGoCare, depending on whether they're using just the software or also the care management services. So these are very profitable and new revenue streams. And the average practice can generate over $1 million in new high profit margin revenue by deploying our platform. So that's created tremendous market pull. Our revenue model and opportunity, we're targeting the $100 billion US virtual care market. We also do have some opportunities in Australia and Canada, and we'll be looking globally as the company grows, but primarily in the US, we're focused on the 37 million Medicare and Medicaid patients who have 2 or more chronic diseases and therefore qualify for a broad range of virtual care services. As Medicare and Medicaid has continued to expand on the program, there are even more patients who are eligible for our services. And we charge subscription fees, which are paid by the clinicians. And so our clients are the clinical care providers, whether they're doctors or home health agencies or skilled nursing facilities. And we charge an average revenue per patient of $40 per patient per month. And on the very low end, we might have some deployments where patients are assessed subscription fees of $25 per patient per month, but more and more we're seeing the subscription fees at the $100 per patient per month level as clinicians begin to adopt and demand more of our care management services. Excuse me. So our growth forecast, by the end of this year, we expect that we'll have done about 11 million in revenue. But more importantly, in terms of what the institutions, the analysts look at when valuing companies, by the end of this year, we'll have hit a revenue run rate of 2 million a month or 24 million annually. And we expect that next year we'll do a minimum of 32 million in revenue and at least double revenues every year going forward for the foreseeable future. And so I think, we're looking at least $1 billion valuation by 2024, if not sooner. And one of the big drivers for valuation for us is those compelling gross margins of over 75% and EBITDA margins of over 45%, which we'll achieve by the end of this year. Trends and tailwinds. So there's a lot of factors right now that make this kind of the perfect storm for Reliq in terms of market conditions. The population is aging and growing, and because of lifestyle choices, and the percentage of the population that has chronic diseases is steadily increasing. So there's going to be increasing demand for our platform for decades to come, frankly. As I mentioned earlier, CMS has introduced financial penalties for clinicians whose patients are hospitalized with preventable complications, which is really what we address and prevent. And since we started in 2018, when there was one billing code that CMS had just introduced for remote patient monitoring, to now, there's now over 18 billing codes, and next year Medicare and Medicaid are introducing an additional 5. So there's clearly a commitment on the part of Medicare and Medicaid to continue to fund these programs and to expand them both in terms of scope and in terms of the value of reimbursements, which have gone up by over 500% in the last 3 years. And the implementation of virtual care programs, the reason that Medicare and Medicaid are willing to financially incent clinicians is because of the savings that they translate to. So if you can bring the cost of care for a patient down from several hundred thousands a year to under 4,000 a year with our platform, that makes very good financial sense for Medicare and Medicaid and makes their health insurance system sustainable going forward as the population ages and grows and there's more demand for services from the payers. So over the course of a year, CMS can save tens of billions of dollars by having these super users of the system, the chronic disease patients, receiving more proactive preventative care using virtual care platforms like Reliq's. And that's just a brief overview of our company. I will stop sharing now and let Jack ask any questions that he may have.
Okay, we got a bunch of audience questions I want to get into in just a second. But first, I just want to kind of recap a couple of important things. So one is, so you're on track right now to hit $2 million per month of December.
Yep.
So 24 million run rate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, look, I mean, I think with that, if you can get to that number, you can, I mean, that could get the company to $1 billion valuation, because, the market is, in the health tech space, with Livongo, et cetera, it's forward looking. It's looking at 30 million. So, things get, people start extrapolating out.
Yeah.
So that would be, $5 plus. Very important is and again, that's just, and you're still adding new contracts. Today you announced another new contract. And we're going to talk about the onboarding. Again, one of the big questions people ask is, okay, what about the onboarding? What about the onboarding? I mean, the contracts, okay. So you got, so you got this new contract. This is in Puerto Rico, so it's a new market. Let's see, okay. And the other, I think one of the big takeaways is essentially you're at you don't need to raise capital, really. I mean, in other words, you can maintain this level of growth. Essentially, it would be self-funded. It would be funded from just internal cash flow coming in through monthly revenues.
That's exactly right. I mean, we're not going to need to raise capital beginning, Q1 of next year. We'll be throwing off pretty significant amounts of free cash. I saw a question that's, relevant flash across the screen asking how our EBITDA margins will grow. So, essentially the EBITDA margins will hit 45% by the end of this year and basically stabilize there. So, they're, lower. They've been lower this year because there are, certain fixed costs with the business, around our entire team. But as we grow, where you'll see a scale in staff is really around the care management center. So those are relatively low cost resources, which will allow us to maintain those margins. But, we basically 45% is kind of our target. You may see some improvements with economies of scale as we move forward, but that's about where we'll be. But with those kinds of margins, you are taking home a significant amount of cash with the amount of revenue that we're projecting that we'll be generating. So, we don't expect that we'll need a raise.
Okay, interesting question. So Jeremy's asking, can you talk about the organic growth as in upgrading patients to more premium service packages and clinics onboarding additional patients as the billing codes change? So one of the big drivers is this, maybe, and you can maybe address this, the changes in Medicaid, Medicare, the billing codes, and what that really means.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, there was one billing code for remote patient monitoring. Now there's multiple billing codes for remote monitoring, including, some new billing codes that they call remote therapeutic monitoring that'll be introduced next year. But we basically are able to offer a whole new suite of services, including behavioral health integration, chronic care management, transitional care management, principal care management. So when we started, you couldn't deploy any kind of remote patient monitoring if you were a specialist, and now you can. So we definitely do see, an increase in the number of services, the number of modules of our platform that existing customers are using. And we also see a lot more demand for our care management center. We didn't have that when we launched in 2018. And we started it to try to support physicians who were wanted to deploy our system. It lets them onboard patients much faster and start generating revenue and driving those better health outcomes much more quickly. But we didn't actually expect quite the demand that we've had. So, that's a very positive thing for us. It will help increase our average revenue per patient. But it's a very positive thing for physicians too, because it really is, it takes a lot of the burden off of them and allows them to deploy very quickly. And I think the increasing reimbursement levels have really made them feel comfortable with, sort of subcontracting that piece out to us, the care management piece, because there's still so much money to be made for the clinician, even if you are paying, the premium fee to have us do the care management.
Great question. What can go wrong, basically? Do you see any obstacles to reaching your run rate target by December?
I think I've said this before, this company has really been battle tested. We've faced a lot of unforeseen obstacles over the year, from wildfires in Australia to, a global pandemic. We did really kind of closely watch the Delta variant as it started to become a really significant issue globally. But what we found is that, in fact, the clinicians who basically shut down their practices to anyone other than COVID patients for the first year and a half of the pandemic are now recognizing that they can't keep their chronic disease patients on hold indefinitely, and we're going to be living with the pandemic, with this virus, for a while. So they've really come around to wanting to be able to offer something virtual to those at-risk patients, and that's definitely driving growth. So for us, I think the big risks would always be if we were hiring human resources that were really rare or difficult to source. But where we are hiring on the care management side, we can hire medical assistants who can work from home anywhere in the US. And there are a lot of medical assistants and nurses and LVNs, so, kind of nurses, aides, that are available. So, we don't have any shortage of potential staff to add. And I think with the Delta variant, one of the things that we found is those clinical resources are really desperate to be able to work from home and not have to work in an acute care setting. So that's, really created a lot of demand for the positions that we're hiring into. So I think we're very much on track for hitting our revenue milestones. And I think next year for vastly exceeding them.
Okay, we got a bunch of good questions that came in. So Lisa, I hope you have like a little time.
Yeah.
Okay. So so
good question.
To seeing the cash coming into the account.
Yeah, so basically a patient has to be on the platform for at least 2 weeks before the clinician can bill for services rendered to that patient. In some cases it's a month, but so let's say worst case it's a month. And then our terms with the clinicians are net 60. So we usually get paid at the outside within 90 days of a patient first being onboarded onto the system.
Okay, so 90 days after somebody actually is onboarded, you have cash in the bank?
Yes.
Okay. Josh is asking, didn't Livongo get bought out and they only had 2 billing codes?
So Livongo, that's interesting. Livongo actually doesn't leverage any billing codes because their platform is too expensive for Medicare and Medicaid. So Livongo sells to employer self-insured plans where they can charge a higher premium, and they're dealing with younger patients. So these are patients who are working age and therefore tend not to be as complex as our patients. And they use sort of the more consumer focusing technology like apps that won't work with the elderly patients that we deal with. They also rely on patients having internet access, which is actually fairly rare with our patient population. So that's why we connect to a lot of these cellular monitoring devices. But I think it's a very good point. Livongo got bought, even though they only focus on type 1 diabetes, and that's 10% of the total diabetes market and a fraction of the total chronic disease market. It also doesn't cover all of the other new billing codes or other new initiatives, which include things like behavioral health integration, mental health care coordination, care for opioid addicted patients, and everything else that our platform does. So yeah, a very limited platform with a relatively narrow audience compared to ours.
Okay, so we have Chris. Now Chris is going to have about 7-8 questions, very detailed questions. So,
yeah, that's okay.
Granular details. Okay. Can you see the question? He's asking, can you expand on your care manager? Do these include clinical call centers to follow up patients?
Yeah, so our call centers, they're acting as an extension of the physician's office. So the patient will never get a call from Relic Health. They'll get a call from their physician's office. And that may be our staff if that physician is using our care management services. And our typical staff are medical assistants. So in terms of clinical qualifications, there's sort of doctors, nurses aides, medical assistants. So they're very inexpensive resources. They're not prescribing medications to patients or making treatment decisions, but what they do is, they spend time reviewing the patient's chart, making sure care plans are up to date. The patient doesn't have a 2-year-old care plan in there, and those are billable services. And then they'll when a patient receives the devices for the first time, they'll give them a call and make sure they know how to use it, plug it into the wall, do what it says. When it says prick your finger, prick your finger. And they'll also call patients who maybe have forgotten to take a reading for a day or two. So they're doing kind of more sort of medical administration services on behalf of the physician's office, and it alleviates a lot of the burden on the physician's office, but we're not responsible for any kind of diagnosis or treatment. It's not like the patients can't call our call center, we call them, but the care management center is entirely staffed with clinical personnel.
Okay. Okay, he's asking, in terms of hardware, how are you able to be hardware agnostic? In other words, how is your platform able to collect data from many different producers of hardware?
Yeah, so we built the platform so that we'd be able to connect easily to multiple different, not just hardware platforms, but also software, so that we can integrate with various EMRs. And there's a lot of different ways that we connect to different pieces of hardware, depending on whether they have SDKs or APIs or what's available. But it was really important to us to be hardware agnostic. We want to be able to support clinicians who have patients who are at home on kidney dialysis machines, and they can collect the data directly from that machine, or they're using CPAP because the masks that help you breathe continuous positive airway pressure for sleep apnea patients, as well as tracking for dementia patients if they wander out of the home, or doing falls detection. If you can offer a clinician a one-stop shop where they can monitor all of their patients with a very diverse range of clinical conditions on one platform, that's a huge competitive advantage, and really is a key differentiator for us in this space.
Okay. Next question. He's asking, okay, so doctors often don't want to pay for the equipment out of pocket.
Doctors the doctors don't pay for the equipment, and the patients don't pay for the equipment. It's paid for by Medicare or Medicaid. And so, there's no out-of-pocket expense around that hardware. Certainly, doctors are not keen on capital expenditures. So that's part of why it's really important that we're hardware agnostic, so that we are able to work with whatever device is actually reimbursable by Medicare and Medicaid. Whereas if you are a company, as many device manufacturers are, that has software but only works with your proprietary hardware, your hardware may not be eligible for reimbursement under Medicare and Medicaid. And that's a huge disadvantage if the doctor actually has to pay, or the patient.
Okay. Okay. So next question. How involved are you with onboarding? How are you ensuring that doctors actually onboard all their patients? Do you help with implementation, training, etc.?
For the most part, we own the onboarding process. So every once in a while, we'll have, particularly with home health agencies, they have the resources, they want to do the onboarding. There's billing codes for them to actually go out to a patient's house and hand deliver a piece of equipment, show them how to use it, so they can generate revenue that way. But for the most part, the physician will download a patient list for us from their EMR, or give us, access to the EMR, and we'll download the patient lists ourselves. And then we coordinate everything, including, having devices shipped to the patient, and contacting the patient, and getting the informed consent from the patient. And we do the pre-authorization, so we actually basically run that patient list through the Medicare Medicaid databases and obtain pre-authorizations for those patients, so we know that when a patient is added to the platform, they are eligible for our services, and the physician will receive revenue. And then we do the electronic claim submission after the physician has delivered the services, or after the patient's been on the platform for 2 weeks to a month. So we really kind of manage all of that piece of the business on behalf of our clients, because it just means we can onboard a lot faster.
Okay. So Chris, a follow-up question. Don't you have to wait for the reimbursement after they provide the equipment? So so
typically what will happen is a physician will write a prescription for that particular device. It'll go to what they call a durable medical equipment provider, or a DME, and that DME will send the equipment, but they're billing Medicare and Medicaid directly. So there's no capital outlay on anyone's part. In our case, with some of the hardware that we have in inventory, there was a particular hardware shortage back in 2018 around a type of device that's both a glucose meter and a blood pressure cuff in one, and that is cellular enabled. So it was a sort of very unique device that was really needed in some of the remote and rural communities. But there was a hardware shortage, so we ended up purchasing a bunch of devices so that the manufacturer would invest in making more of them. And so now when we have a deployment, we will either include if they want those particular devices, we are almost out of inventory, so that's not something we'll be doing long term, but we can either provide those devices up front and help coordinate the Medicare and Medicaid reimbursement. We've already paid for those devices ourselves back in 2018, or we can roll that cost into the monthly fee for the clinician if the clinician wants to actually own those devices and potentially reuse them down the road. But generally going forward, we're not really involved on the hardware side.
Okay. Chris is asking, is the call center outsourced?
Yeah. Sorry for hijacking the Q&A.
Well, he's usually, we haven't seen him in a while. Sometimes he asks like 12, which is good. He asks a very good question, so I don't mind.
Good.
Chris, you can ask as many questions as you want.
It's not outsourced. We own the care management piece. We have a call center in Florida, but it's basically as soon as we opened it, the pandemic hit, and you know how well Florida has done through the pandemic. So most of our call center staff work from their own homes, and we now have call center staff members in multiple different states. It doesn't really matter as long as they're somewhere in the U.S. So that they're licensed.
Okay, if there's a brand new device that comes out, how will you be able to connect to that right away?
Yeah, generally device manufacturers make it pretty easy to connect to their devices because that's how they sell more devices. And so we're able to connect quite quickly to new devices. Occasionally there'll be proprietary devices that really don't let anyone connect to them except through their own software, but those usually don't do well in the market because if you can only use their proprietary software, then you're monitoring one condition through this hardware, and that's not practical, and that's not something that physicians will use.
Okay, Josh is asking, do you expect some significant new customers this quarter, new or existing clients that just expanded their users?
Yeah, no, I think definitely we are in a phase where we're acquiring a lot of new clients, and I think where we started out working with kind of individual physician practices and home health agencies, we've scaled that up significantly to working with networks. So, this quarter ends in a few weeks, but certainly by the end of this year, I think we will be able to demonstrate significant traction with larger scale new clients.
Okay, so you cut out at the end. You're saying you were.
I was saying that, by the end of this year, this calendar year, so within the next few months, we will have gained significant traction. We expect to gain significant traction with some new large-scale clients.
Okay. Michael's asking, for some of these contracts where onboarding is expected over, 18 to 24 months, are they locked in, or can competitors technically come in and offer a low price or whatever? How secure are these?
Yeah, you have to keep in mind, we don't have head-to-head competition in this space. So we don't go in and bid against other companies because there's no other company that does what we do. Between the care management piece, the fact that we're a multilingual platform, so we can deploy in any language. We have a very unique patient experience. If you look at what's historically been done with remote monitoring and with apps on a tablet, those don't work with the elderly, sick patients. And most companies are not prepared to deal with patients who don't have internet access. Most of the remote monitoring solutions that have ever been developed rely on those apps on tablets where you're pairing a device by Bluetooth. The elderly and Bluetooth do not mix well. So, Bluetooth is inherently unstable, and you're constantly having to repair those devices. That's not possible for these patients. A lot of them are, quite sick. They have visual acuity, memory issues. So we have a very unique patient experience. Looking at our deployments in the U.S. Virgin Islands, in rural Texas, in Puerto Rico, we can't rely on neighborhood internet access. We're definitely using, cellular, and we're one of the few companies that can do that. And we have a very comprehensive platform that leverages all of these new billing codes, which nobody else has. So, we've also got the advantage of we've established ourselves as the standard of care in this space, the community care space. So if a new competitor comes along, they don't have 3 years of data showing that they actually do prevent hospitalizations and ER visits. They don't have 3 years of data showing that their clinician clients are receiving Medicare reimbursement. This is a very conservative market. If you look at, as an example, the hospital EMR space, electronic medical record space, there's 2 companies that are massively the 2 major market shareholders, even though their software is complained about by everyone who uses them. So getting that sort of first to market advantage and establishing yourself as a standard of care is a very long-term sustainable advantage in healthcare, and that's an advantage we have.
Okay, so I think it's a very important point that you mentioned, is that you actually have, empirical data. You have 3 years, which you can, and again, doctors, the healthcare system, it's very, very conservative.
Yes.
So if you can show, insurance companies, et cetera, that, hey, you spend X and here is the payoff.
Yeah.
This is, this is what they need.
Yeah.
And again, that's a massive competitive advantage that gives you a massive head start.
Right. We have, established ROI models based on data, and that's a huge competitive advantage. And in this market, more customers buy by reference than any other method. So, advertising isn't typically very effective. It's really just, you have to, get out there, establish yourself as the standard of care. And in our case, we have incredibly user-friendly software. We see, 99% adherence rates in our patients, where, other companies, they get 0% adherence after the first week or 2. And so we really have a very solid product, and we are seeing that buying by reference now. We get more calls inbound than we could possibly ever go after, new clients on our own. And that's really how you've got the right product for the healthcare market is, one clinician is using it, they're making money, their patients are doing well, they tell 6 of their friends, they tell 6 of their friends. It's that old shampoo commercial from the 70s. And, they tell 2 friends. And that's really what you need to model your business on in terms of being in healthcare. You want to make sure that you get out there, that you capitalize on your first to market advantage, and that you do a good job so that you do get those reference customers and get those referrals. Those will really be what drives your business. And there's no new entrant to the market who could come along now and get to the point we are with that, the solid references, the credibility, the referrals. It would take years.
No, it's interesting. Okay, so Chris is back. He's got more questions. I knew he wasn't done. Okay, so it says you have smaller companies like Pier 24, Dario, who are cheaper than RHT. Do you not see it as competitors because of what's your take on this?
Yeah. So, for example, Dario, we've run into them in the market before. We very quickly and easily displaced them because they have proprietary hardware. Their software only works with their hardware. So you can only monitor patients who have the clinical conditions for which Dario has hardware, which is by no means everything. And they also don't do behavioral health integration. The reason that those platforms are cheaper is because they are much narrower. So they don't allow the clinicians to provide the same kind of care. And for the most part, most of those platforms are actually patient facing. So, there's an app, there's software that goes with that hardware, but it's not aimed at clinicians. It's aimed at patients. So you can share that data with your clinician, but they can't bill for it. So there's no revenue for the physician associated with a lot of those hardware specific software platforms. And even for the ones that, do have a physician facing component, because you're monitoring a narrow range of conditions and you're not doing everything else, the chronic care management, the care management services, the physician's going to get a really low level of reimbursement for that. So when clinicians are using software like that, there are hardware manufacturers that have physician-facing software that they're paying $5 a month for, and they quickly switch to us at $40 to $100 per patient per month because it makes a huge difference in how much revenue they're going to generate. And it also has a huge impact on the quality metrics for the physician. So those narrowly focused hardware-specific software platforms don't typically drive significant improvements in health outcomes, whereas we do. So we help the physicians avoid those penalties.
Okay. One more question from Chris, and then we'll. Okay. So, Chris, you need to number the questions. I think last time we had Chris with Cloud MD, if I remember, he had like question number 1, 2, and he had like I think 8. We have a record here, so which is a good omen for Relic. So okay, so he's asking, why do you think there hasn't been one main player who has been able to establish themselves in the space? Is it only because of the billing codes?
No, I mean, that's part of it. Certainly, up until the last year or two, this wasn't a particularly compelling space for most companies. There weren't very many billing codes. When we started in the market in 2018, we were very much missionaries. Physicians hadn't heard of these new billing codes, didn't know what to make of them, didn't consider the level of reimbursement really worth their while. And then there were a lot of hiccups with Medicare and Medicaid, as there often are when they first roll out a program, where they were, denying eligibility on patients who in theory were eligible. So, there was some hair on the market, let's say, back 3 years ago. So it's a relatively new market. But more importantly, I think overall in healthcare, the budget has traditionally always been aimed at the acute care space. So that's where all the money went, was into hospitals and anything related to hospitals, including post-discharge care. And so there were companies, VSBY and others, who really focused on remote monitoring for the post-discharge period. But that's a 30-day period, so you have a lot of churn of patients. And it's really tough to make money in that space. Hospitals are very needy clients, and those are very expensive solutions. And no one really could figure out how to translate those existing platforms that were aimed at hospitals that cost millions of dollars to install and millions of dollars to support and require a hospital IT team that's dozens of developers to support it. How do you translate that into the community market where there's no IT support? Doctors don't have a capital budget, so they're not going to be able to spend a huge amount of money upfront to deploy your solution, and they're not going to want to use something that requires a lot of support. And so we built a platform specifically for the community care market based on our very deep understanding of that space. I grew up in a hospital with chronic disease patients, literally from 3 weeks old. That I was in that hospital with my mother, who ran the stroke unit. And so we understand the patient population and have a very good patient experience. And I think a lot of tech companies really struggle with the concept of providing that very low tech experience to patients, but that's what you have to do to succeed with these particular patient population, the older sick patients. And most of the companies in the space were so focused on hospitals and these very complex systems that they just couldn't pivot to the community care space. And with the billing codes being so low, there really wasn't a particularly strong business case there. So we were able to kind of sneak in there and, being fairly forward-looking ourselves. And, I've wanted my whole career, my whole life, to improve care for chronic disease patients in the home. So we had a head start, and now that we've built that credibility, we have a sustainable competitive advantage as the first to market, and in that space where we can really be all things to all people in the community, because we offer such a broad range of services that are supported by our platform, along with our care management services.
Yeah, I mean that's really like part of the whole Relic is this. You occupy this really unique space. It would be very hard to displace Relic. So you have this very strong competitive moat, which is why you can get this massive valuation at once you hit that. Because when I talk about billion, it's not a crazy number, because we've seen those types of numbers paid for those unique situations. It's not. I mean, and $2 billion is not a big deal for a company like a Teladoc or whoever. I mean, even $2 billion is nothing these days for these guys.
I mean, Teladoc,
Amazon. Let's say Amazon. I mean, I'm not saying Amazon, but let's say they want to get at that space.
Teladoc paid $18.5 million. Okay, let me start that again. Paid $18.5 billion for Livongo at a time when Livongo's revenues were around $400 million a year. So an over 40 times multiple. And Livongo is operating at a loss. They have an adjusted EBITDA metric that they like to trot out that's positive, but operating at a loss. And going forward, both of those companies are looking at single-digit EBITDA margins, best case scenario at scale, because their platforms, their solutions rely very heavily on human resources and a lot of not just monitoring, but coaching and things. Whereas we've defined a patient experience that really works for the elderly patient, lets them feel very autonomous and independent, but gives them a safety net, and really does clinically, we've proven, reduce complications and therefore hospitalizations and the associated healthcare spending. So, I think there are very compelling multiples being paid out there for companies that have far a much smaller potential addressable market than we have. Just we have legs in a way that most companies don't.
Okay.
Yeah,
the new contracts that RQHT is announcing, are those in addition to the backlog or included? Where do they fit in?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, they are not part of that backlog. They're new. In some cases, particularly with some of the challenges around the pandemic, we've had some clients shift their onboarding to early next year from this quarter. So, it's still going to come out to the same basic revenue run rate at the end of this quarter. But in terms of the overall backlog that we expect to have onboarded by the middle of 2023, that's growing every day. Okay,
I think this is going to be the last question. Okay, Chris, yes, okay, can you touch on the physician's job? Basically, doctors don't like to do, how were they involved?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We were just talking about that on a staff meeting. Basically, the physicians do almost nothing to do with deploying our platform. Everything that's done is done by their office administrator or director of nursing, and the physicians really don't have to do much. I mean, even the alerts often are funneled at the physician's request to the director of nursing or to another staff member, and then the physician will be called in if the prescription change is warranted or something that requires a physician. But the doctors are not required to be involved in any way in order to get us set up. We can work with your office manager to download that patient list. The EMRs allow the physician to quickly and easily sort based on, or the office manager to sort based on the clinical conditions. And so there's very, very little involvement from the physicians themselves, except upfront when they're, looking at the platform and deciding whether or not they want to buy it. They are certainly the ones who make the decision on purchasing, but from there on, everything is delegated to somebody else in their office.
Oh. Lisa, thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for joining our live stream today. Thank you, Chris, for all the questions, and we'll see you all on the next live stream.
Yes, and the slide deck I presented today, which is new, will be up on our website by tomorrow.
Fantastic. Thank you again.